mentioned, I'm going to be talking about sort of a foundational lay of the land in terms of what's going on in terms of scholarship administration. And then we'll get into some of your experiences. We really hope to hear from you on what you're seeing on the ground, and hopefully I can answer any questions that have come up. So let me introduce myself. My name is Shannon Wolf. I am the Managing Director and Chief of Staff at AAUW, which means I manage a whole bunch of things at the national office, but I work really closely with branches and states on a lot of governance issues, including things that come up around scholarships. And we know I've been in a bunch of spaces where questions about scholarships have come up. And so we thought it would be a good idea to have a session where we talk through some of these issues and try to have a back and forth and an exchange about some of the issues and questions that you might have. So before we get started, we're going to start off with a quick poll. We have a few questions in our poll. We hope that you will take a moment to take a look at those and let us know where you are. So the first question is, how involved is your branch or state in awarding scholarships? And your choices are that you currently offer scholarships to women through your branch or state. You currently offer scholarships to women through a college or university, so you're not administering them directly. You're currently considering launching a scholarship, or you don't offer any scholarships. Those are your choices on the first question. And then you just scroll down in the same poll question box. And the second question is about, if you are awarding scholarships through a local college or university, have they required changes to the scholarship criteria in the last 5 years? And so your questions are, yes, we can no longer only offer the scholarship to women. Yes, they requested a change other than sex or gender. No, they have not requested any changes. And the last choice is, we don't award scholarships through a local college or university. So I see we're getting some folks participating. I love to see that. We're up to 60%. Oh my gosh, you all are so great at polls. I love it so much. There's nothing worse than like having 0 people take your poll when you're trying to get some feedback. So this is amazing. We're just going to give it maybe 10 more seconds, and then we'll close that down and show the results. So right now,
can I just ask one question to make sure I answered it? Because I'm fairly new at this. When you say offering scholarship through the branch, you mean the branch comes up with the money? Obviously, the scholarship is to go to a college.
It means that you are administering the application and the funding through the branch and awarding that to either an individual or an institution.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep. Thanks for the question, Susan. Great. So Carson, could we show the poll results? That would be great. All right. So about 80% of folks here with us tonight are offering scholarships to women through your branch or state. So that's a really good number. I'd love to see that. About 30% of you are offering that through a local college or university. I suspect that's where we're seeing a lot of the issues come up recently. And we have a few folks who are considering launching or don't currently offer, but we welcome you and we hope that this is a learning opportunity. Let's see here. So in terms of those who award through a local college or university, looks like about 25% of those can no longer offer the scholarship to women. That is consistent with the guidance from the Office of Human Rights, OCR, the Department of Education. It means something. I say OCR all the time. And then a couple of folks have requested a change other than sex or gender. That's really interesting. I'd love to know what other changes they required from you. About 31% have not requested any changes. So that's really interesting as well. All right. Well, thanks to all of you. That was really good for me to learn more about who we have in the audience today and participating. So in terms of the goals of the session, next slide, Carson, please. Thank you. We have a few meeting goals. So the first is just to understand some changes that have come up in the last couple of years around sex and gender-based scholarships. We also are going to talk about how we can create programs that align with AAUW's mission while also meeting legal requirements. We're going to talk about some strategies beyond scholarships. If you have heard you're no longer able to award your scholarship to women and you don't want to do that, there are some different ways that we can go about offering support to local colleges and universities in some different ways. And then again, we want to hear at the end from you about some of your issues. So I just want to start off by saying I am not a lawyer and I cannot give you legal advice. I don't know anything about state-specific scholarship rules. So with anything, when I talk about with this, I'm talking about it from a sort of a national Department of Education, national legal landscape. I always recommend that if folks are having issues in state that you consult with a local attorney. It doesn't have to be super expensive if you find somebody who has a small practice. But it's a really good idea to just make sure that you're checking that box for any state specific requirements. All right, so before we move on to our sort of lay of the land, we have one more poll question for you. Carson, if you could go ahead and launch that. Are you aware of or have you referenced the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights guidance on gender-based scholarships? Do folks know what that is? Have you seen that before? Yes, I'm aware of and have referenced the guidance. Yes, I'm aware, but have not referenced it. I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with the details. No, I was not aware of this guidance and or not sure. I need more information. Let's give folks a couple more seconds. Look at this participation, already above 80%. I love it so much. Great. All right, 95%. I'm so impressed. All right, let's end the poll. Thanks, and share the results. Perfect. So most of the folks on the call are not aware of the guidance. Great, we're going to go over it. We'll also link it in the chat, so you'll have that available. We have some folks who are aware and have referenced the guidance, and some folks who are sort of in the middle. So this is a good place for us to start because the guidance is actually quite specific to scholarships that are taking place within college and university settings. And we're going to go into that in a little bit of more detail. Next slide, please, Carson. Okay, so let's just do a basic lay of the land. When we're talking about sex and gender-based scholarships, we're limiting scholarships to applicants based on either sex or gender, okay? So we're talking about either biological attributes, which is sex, or gender encompassing cultural identity expressions, which is gender, right? So sex or gender. Typically at AAUW, we talk about gender. We talk about gender equity. That's what you're going to hear from us most often. I think most scholarship programs are probably also based on gender. Your scholarships are narrowed to people who identify as women or who are women. You may have that kind of language. If you talk about male versus female, that's when we're talking about sex versus gender. The legal framework that sort of takes care of these types of programs is really within Title IX, and it prohibits sex discrimination in educational programs. And historically, though, there were some exceptions to that, right? So if all sex discrimination were not allowed, we would not be able to give any kind of scholarships to people who identify as women or to females. But historically, that was something that we could do. As you know, AAUW has been around since 1881, giving scholarships to women since 1888. So we've been doing it for a very long time. It's only recently that those rules changed to really narrow and restrict what colleges and universities specifically could do. And so next we're going to talk about the administrative structure of how you're administering your scholarship program, because that really, really, really matters in what we're talking about today. Next slide, please. So we're going to have two separate types of administration here. One, we have a scholarship program, as Susan mentioned earlier, that is administered by the branch or state. That means that you are creating the criteria for those scholarship applications, you're reviewing applications, you're promoting them, you are hopefully having a panel that reviews all of them, you're making a decision, you're awarding the money. That is all happening through your state or your branch entity, right? So a 501c3 or a C4 organization is doing that work. On the other side, we have institution administered scholarships. So those are scholarships where a branch or a state has given money to a local college or university, and the college or university is the entity that is doing all of that work: application review, choosing selection, the applicant selection, awarding the money. Where we have the issue with the OCR's guidance is in those institution administered scholarships. If you are administering a scholarship from the branch or state, you have a different set of standards as AAUW National does. You are allowed to have scholarships for women and girls. You are allowed to have scholarships for females. If you want to do that, I would recommend you do say women. That's all allowed because separate private entities, which is what we are nonprofit organizations, but we are private. We do not take federal funding. So the big difference between us and a local college and university is that they for the most part, get federal funding in some way or another. Doesn't always have to be your big Harvards and your Princetons and all the colleges and universities that are sort of in the news right now. A lot of colleges and universities are federally funded, and they are under Title IX rules, as your state and branch is not. And that's why if you are administering a scholarship through a college or university, you may be hearing more from them about needing to change criteria. If you're administering your scholarship through the branch or state, you do not need to make those changes at this time. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So OCR came out with some new guidelines around how gender and sex-based scholarships can be administered in the first Trump administration. So this has been going on for a couple of years, but it took a couple of years for colleges and universities kind of get up to speed with it. There were some outside groups that were suing some colleges and universities to say, hey, you have these scholarships and you need to change how you're administering them. So it's kind of taken some time to get here. And obviously, as we see in the current moment, there's a lot of attention being paid to sex and gender-based anything really in terms of what we're seeing. So there's a couple of different ways that guidance is expressed. So one, it specifically says that colleges and universities cannot have scholarships that are specifically for women. And so that's one of the reasons why we asked you that question around if you have one at a local college or university, have they asked you to change the criteria if that was originally the criteria? Because what I'm hearing from a lot of branches is I'm getting asked by my college or university to change the criteria. We don't want to change it. What do we do? Right. And we'll talk a little bit about some options for you moving forward. So there's just the administration of the scholarship itself in terms of the criteria of who can apply and get awarded. But there's also a piece within the OCR guidance around promotion. And it basically says that the college or university cannot promote scholarships that are gender or sex-based. And so that's been a bit of a concern. We got a question in the registration questions that some of you filled out saying a local college said that they wouldn't promote our stuff anymore. Is that allowed? And the truth is they are not really allowed to do that. I think it's less enforced than some of the other than the actual criteria itself, but the national office itself was approached by a very large university that used to link to our graduate fellowships on their website. And I got an email from this guy from their general counsel's office, and he said, hey, we're going to have to take this down if you won't change your fellowships to be for both men and women. And I said, well, we're not going to do that because we're not legally required to do that. And so they were no longer able to promote our fellowships. So I mentioned that because I think for some of you, it may mean a different way of thinking about how you have to advertise for some of your scholarships. If you are counting on your local colleges and universities to promote them for you, that may not be something that is viable for you anymore. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is just insurance. If you do not have branch insurance, I would recommend that you get it. If you administer a scholarship program from your branch or state, you really should be having insurance. We really recommend that quite vigorously. It's just a good idea. It's not saying you're going to get sued. I think the national office has a bigger target on our back because we have a large endowment and we've already been sued, as you might have heard from last summer. But it just helps to sort of minimize that risk to your branch or state. And that's
what specific insurance, I mean, how would you describe it?
It falls under general liability.
Just under the D&O?
Yeah, exactly. So it would fall under your regular insurance policy. Yeah, exactly. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have some common challenges that we're seeing and that I'm hearing most often from branches and states. So as I said, there's promotional limitations. There may be some eligibility criteria in terms of things that were set up in the past and that were perfectly fine, or maybe your branch could have had a local scholarship at a college or university set up for 40 years. And now you're getting a call from their administrator saying, hey, we can't do this anymore. Or in some cases, they simply changed the criteria for applicants and the branch found out later that there was a man who was awarded the scholarship. That's happened as well. So having that communication with your local college and university is really important if you don't have that right now, just about how they're handling the administration of that scholarship. But there are some ways that we can maintain mission alignment and work with those new restrictions. There really isn't a way to keep your restriction based on gender if you have that at a college or university. That is pretty much been decided by the Department of Education that is not legal. But there are some other things that you can do, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Next slide, please. All right. So what we want to do is always keep the mission at the forefront, right? But you can support gender equity in a couple of different ways. I know that most scholarships, if not all, have been really around giving a scholarship to a woman. Unfortunately, if you've set that up with a college or university, that might no longer be viable. But we can still keep mission at the forefront. So the way that we've talked about that internally at AAUW is to talk about historically marginalized groups or underrepresented groups. And you can talk with your local college and university about what that means to them. That can be defined in a number of ways. I don't have a definition for you because you can really define that according to what your community might need. But as long as that's not based on race or gender, you can sort of talk with them about how, from a financial aid perspective, they're trying to reach out on these things, because it's the same sort of set of standards that is affecting how admissions, essentially, at colleges and universities, that is affecting these scholarships. So talk to them about how they've dealt with that and how they sort of think about diversity. I know that's a word that's kind of a hot button right now, but it's still worth discussing. Colleges and universities really still do want to have diverse student bodies. And so that's a really good way to sort of talk through some of these issues. You can also have a focus area that is specific. So you could say, we want our scholarship to go to somebody who is studying gender studies, women's studies, any equity, other equity related fields. Sometimes the names are a bit different depending on what kind of college or university kind of programs they have. You could do STEM. Again, with these programs, it wouldn't be just solely women that would be eligible, but you kind of can get closer to some of these things by having some of these criteria. And then what I always tell people is really to think about what would support women on campus, and are there different programs on campus that would proportionately support women? It's mostly going to be working parents. Another one you might consider is first generation students. That's not specific to women, but is also a really good way to, I think about equity in society and opportunity in education. Childcare is another one where we've had folks who have thought about supporting programs on campus that take care of children while folks go to class. That's probably going to disproportionately impact women. So thinking about, and maybe having a conversation with your local college and university about what programs women are participating in that may be something that you could also support. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is getting into a little bit more about the specific language. If your scholarship was set up as limited to women or females, exclusively for women's education, female applicants only, things like that. And again, I'm talking about those scholarships set up at colleges and universities. If you have this language in a scholarship that you are administering from your branch, you're fine, you don't need to change it. But here are some alternatives that you may want to consider. So again, students advancing gender equity or supporting diversity in X field. I know for fellowships and grants at the national level, we ask folks to talk about what their commitment is to equity, what kind of work have they done for equity. It's all part of the scholarship application, and that's all perfectly fine and legal. So these are just some ideas about what you could potentially do that's really going to be specific to your branch. And I know a lot of branches have had these programs for a long time. And so I would really recommend, if you're getting some feedback from your college or university that you need to change your program, that you bring folks together and really talk about what your options are and sort of what do you overall want to accomplish with the scholarship. Next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, there's a couple of different support strategies that you could use. There's some mentoring programs or maybe some academic support programs or academic programs to support like gender, women's studies, intersectional academic programs. Those are always good places to invest your dollars. There may also be some professional development funds out there. This is still a changing area for colleges and universities, right? Not all DEI is dead. And we want to make sure that we can support those activities as much as possible with our local colleges and universities. So it really starts with an open conversation with your folks at the local college and university and asking them what their needs are. Next slide, please. Right, so now we are going to get into some of your stories and suggestions.